Hello. Oh, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Have a seat. We are going to get started. I would like to thank Faith Forum for sharing their time with us today and letting us have this spot. OAR has been working close with Kaylee to make more educational material available to everybody so that we can kind of be on the same page about some things. So there is a packet that I handed out. We ran out of copies, which is good news. But we will be printing more. They'll be available in the office. We also have a PDF version that Teresa will be putting on the website for those of you on Zoom who don't have access to it either way, or you can't get in for some reason. You can email her, she can send you a copy, or you can get a paper one come Monday.
Eric's gonna make some more.
Just kidding. Also, Eric's gonna make more.
Because he's the best.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Pastor Eric.
So now the packet is just an extra for you because Kaylee's going to try and keep things brief and quick, and we'll do about 45 minutes and then at the end a 15-minute Q&A. So the packet serves as, a resource for you to look more in depth at what we can't cover because there's just so much. So at that, I'm going to hand it over to Kaylee.
Cool.
And
awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. Thanks everybody for coming. So like Carolyn said, this is I don't know if she said it because I was trying to talk to Eric, but this is a 4-part series and we're going to keep it pretty simple for the first one. And then as time goes on, we're going to add a little more, complicated things that might seem a little overwhelming because we got a lot of questions about pronouns. We're not covering pronouns today. Pronouns are in May. So you have time to gather all your questions about pronouns for our session in May. Today we're doing the very, very basics. So if we could have the slides up, let's see if they dance. They're not dancing. That's okay. All right, you can go to the next one. So there's our lovely 101. Oh, they do dance. Oh, I see. I told you it wouldn't be boring. So today, these are the outline of where we're going, right? So what do the letters mean? We hear a lot LGBTQIA. What are all those letters? We're going to practice saying it. This is interactive, so we're going to get some good practice in. We're going to talk a little bit about language. What language we should be using. What language that's kind of outdated or derogatory, language that we really probably shouldn't be using anymore. The rainbow flag, what does it mean? Some of you might not even know the history. We'll talk a little bit about the history behind the rainbow flag, and each color actually means something, so you'll learn about that. I know, she's impressed. Other symbols, we're going to show you some symbols of things that you might see around that you might not know what they mean. We'll talk a little about those, and then we're going to do a brief history lesson. In your packet, you actually have a LGBTQ timeline that goes back, that's multiple pages long that we found from GLSEN. There's a lot of information out there, but we're going to kind of highlight some important things, especially things that have happened in the last 20, 25 years. So let's get started. Oh my goodness, I didn't think it was going to move. So excited. So we see, oh, you have a question? So the packets are, Pastor Eric's making more because we didn't know we'd have so many people. So this is wonderful. And the packet is also in your email as a PDF. So what do the letters mean? We see a lot, LGBTQIA+. We're going to go through each one of them. We're going to practice saying them out loud. And we're also going to talk about what each one means. So we're going to start with the letter L. What does the letter L stand for? Lesbian. Say it again. Oh my, good job. Listen, sometimes we get a little uncomfortable saying these words if we're not used to them. I'm going to put my parents on the spot, but when I came out to them, they were like, well, what word do we use? And you could tell they were like, my daughter's A lesbian? You have to say it like that. So L is for lesbian, which is traditionally used as women who are attracted to other women. I've learned recently that more non-binary people are using the term lesbian because they kind of more identify as that, and they're attracted to women. So, but lesbian traditionally is women who are attracted to women. So that's our L. What is it again? Lesbian. We gotta practice saying the words. G is for gay. So we're doing the alphabet. This is the LGBT alphabet. Gay is a word that basically means same gender attraction. Often it is used for, oh, hi, Ro. What's happening? For a gay man, right? A gay man, but that is also a word that I use to describe myself. And in case you're not familiar with me, why am I qualified to do this presentation? It's because I'm gay. So, and also because I've done these presentations before. But gay is more of an umbrella term, but it also more specifically just goes to same gender attraction. So let's say, what does the G stand for? Gay. All right. Now lesbian and gay, I feel like we all have a pretty good handle on. Do you agree? Are there any questions so far? No, okay. Oh, yes. Oh, we're not getting there yet. No, it's not the same as non-binary. Some non-binary people who do not identify as a woman do identify as lesbian. A non-binary person is someone who does not identify as male or female, or as or masculine or feminine. They view it as a spectrum, and they fall somewhere in the middle. But gender is next time. I'm sorry if I jumped too far ahead. So then we get to the letter B. B stands for bisexual. Is someone who is attracted to both the same gender and also the opposite gender. And that's not necessarily a 50-50 split. And there's a lot of questions and confusion about bisexuality, because it's like, well, how can you be attracted to both a man and a woman at the same time? And I have several friends who identify as bisexual, and they just say, I'm attracted to the people that I am attracted to, right? And so it's not necessarily 50% men, 50% women. Some people are more like 90 and 10, but they identify as bisexual. So what does the B stand for? Bisexual. Then we get to the letter T, and T is for transgender. So transgender, we're going to spend a lot more time in our 102 series talking about gender expression, gender identity, and transgender, but a little introduction to that. So as everyone knows, when you are born, you are assigned a sex at your birth based on what parts the doctor sees, right? So that is part of, so I was assigned female at birth, and inside my body and my brain, I feel female. So I do not identify as transgender. A transgender person is someone whose internal knowledge of gender is different from the sex they are assigned at birth. So for instance, a transgender man is someone who was assigned female at birth, but later felt inside that that is not who they are, so they have made the transition to becoming a male. And that does not necessarily mean surgeries or physical changes. So there's a big spectrum of transgender folks out there. And that goes into gender expression and identity as well. But a transgender person is one whose internal knowledge of gender is different from the sex that has been assigned to them at birth. That one's a little tricky. Any questions? No, one's a little, you have to take a minute to wrap in. So the T is for transgender. Now the Q. And I know that this is a word that we often don't like to use. I already see some nods and faces. The Q stands for queer or questioning. So let's say it together. So we'll say the first Q is for queer or questioning. So we're going to start with the questioning because I think that one's a little easier to wrap our heads around. That's basically people who are exploring their sexuality. They know that they are not heterosexual, but they're not sure quite yet where they fall on the spectrum. When I began questioning my own sexuality, I thought, well, maybe I was bisexual. Maybe I don't know where I am in the world. I was a Q for a long, long time. And then eventually found my way. So a questioning person is just someone who is exploring. Hi, Ro. Came back. Now, the word queer. The word queer was used as a slur. Yeah, I see a lot of yes, that's a word that we don't use. But the word queer has been reclaimed by the LGBTQ community over the years. In many circles, queer has become a word that LGBTQ people use to describe themselves. I use the word queer as more of an umbrella term that kind of encompasses all of the letters, LGBTQIA+. It's also sometimes just a little bit easier to say. But it is recommended that unless you are part of the LGBTQIA community, you don't really use the word. I learned that. I know. Yeah. So, but what I wanted to do today about that word is that often when a member of the LGBTQ community uses the word queer, people cringe, right? I've actually heard somebody say that they've been asked not to use that word to describe themselves. And we have to be reminded that that it's okay for queer folks like myself to use that word. Not everybody might use that word, and that's okay, right? Some people again, the umbrella of words we use to identify ourselves as people in the queer community just varies. And so that word, we have to get more used to hearing. It also, when I use the word queer, I sometimes use it if I want to keep people questioning. What does she mean by queer? Sometimes it's like, if you don't want to use the exact terminology, I am a lesbian, I use the word queer instead. In the United Methodist Church, as many of you know, we're going through a lot. That's in 104. We're going to talk about churches. Whew, get ready for that one. But the word queer has become I am part of the Queer Clergy Caucus, which is made Queer Clergy Caucus, which is made of all queer clergy. There are a lot of us, believe it or not. Then there's also the Queer Delegate Caucus. And at Jurisdictional Conference, it was the queer delegates' call to inclusion in the church. So it's more because rather than the letters get a little bit hard to, let's be honest, there's constantly evolving. We don't want to leave people out. So queer has become an umbrella term in many ways. But let's practice saying it, even though maybe you shouldn't go around saying, my pastor said it was okay to say, no. But when you hear it, so let's say it together, queer. So I'm going to try and use that word more often so we're more exposed to it. Oh, Ron Johnson has a question. Yes. LGBTQIA+. LGBTQ. That's unfortunately you could say LGBT community, LGBTQ+ community, the gay community, the gay community. Elena has a question. Comment?
What if somebody says to you that they're queer? Can you refer to them as queer?
If that's the way they identify themselves, yes. I would say yes. Because, yeah. With their permission. With their permission. Yeah. If somebody says, I identify as queer, then you would say, this is my spouse who identifies as queer. But not as a kind of a like, oh, those queers. But no, no, that's bad. But if someone were to say, my daughter-in-law is queer, that is okay. So thank you for the clarifications. These are good questions. Oh yeah, another question. I love it.
You know, if it's stumbling all the letters, the gay community is a reasonable.
The gay community, yeah, I think that's a reasonable one. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yep, maybe Carolyn could be our MC. If you have a question, let's make sure. Sorry, thank you, Hal. Repeat the question. Stephanie's question was, is the phrase gay community okay to use, basically, is your question, right? And we said yes, that would be an acceptable answer, an acceptable way to describe the community. But we really want to get you into the habit, and we're going to practice this at the end, of saying LGBTQ. Yeah. Oh, Rich has a question. Maybe it'll just be easier because my
that word is so bad, that word queer, that I don't think it should ever be used, because believe me, I've talked to people who have trouble with gay people, and the thing that I find, to me, queer is the same as the N-word.
Right.
And that's why I think that whatever this organization does, they should try to eliminate that thing.
Right, but this is the thing, is with many marginalized groups, they often reclaim what has once been a word that has been used negatively as a slur.
Word, I don't think you really want to try to rescue it.
Right, but I mean, I'm one person in the queer community, and Carolyn just sent me an article about Gen Z and the term queer. It's becoming more and more accepted in the younger circles of LGBTQ people. But if you were to have someone in your family say, I identify as queer, it's really, really important that you begin to be comfortable hearing and using that word, because then it makes them feel included and loved. Even if you trip over it, I tell clergy in my circles all the time, straight clergy, particularly straight and cisgender clergy, I tell them, I don't care if you stumble over the words. I would rather you try and mess up than not try and use a derogatory term.
Yeah, mention another thing. A lot of these terms in here are related to sex, and that's the thing they need to get away from. Get away from the sex part of it.
It's not about sex.
Go to like transgender. Go to dual gender. Use gender or something like that, because, these things conjure up things in people's mind.
Right.
And
however,
I think if you could get away from that.
We have, so I talk as if I were where you are, you have to begin looking at it as not just about sex. It's about emotional attraction. It's about romantic attraction. It's not just what happens in the bedroom. And that's not our job. Hold on, let me finish. That's not our job as members of the LGBTQ community to tell you about. That's your job as members of the straight and cisgender community to begin to do your own work by realizing this isn't about what people do in their bedroom. Because guess what? I don't think about what straight people do in their bedrooms. Trust me, I don't. Right, but then
these words are not helping any.
But these words are words that are true to the LGBTQ community, and that is just where we're at with those words. And that's why we're having sessions like this, is to be able to educate you to begin to realize that sexual attraction is not just about what happens in the bedroom. Pastor Eric, yes, please. Wait, let's give him the microphone. Thanks, Pastor Eric.
For the record, I'm not queer. I'm just a little odd, but no, but I do think that as a straight ally, it's important to me to, like, whatever the LGBT community, however people want to be labeled, to respect those labels, and go with that. And it's on me to remember, oh, this isn't just about sex, it's about love. And
Right.
but what I really wanted to comment on was the overall reference. I know I have transgender friends who do not like to be referred to as part of the gay community because they don't consider themselves gay. They much prefer LGBTQ, and just leave it at that. Or you can add the extra ones, but LGBTQ tends to be more generally, in my experience.
Yeah, or gay and transgender community is another way to describe it as well. We got another question from Susan.
I just want to make a comment. I just read a book about a transgender woman, and she said it's to her, not to everybody that's transgender, it really isn't about sex. She said it's not about who I go to bed with, it's about who I am when I go to bed.
Yes, thank you so much for that. That is such an important thing, and that I totally forgot to mention, but that is 100% true. It's not about who you go to bed with, it's about who you are, inside and outside the bedroom. Yes.
I just want to add that it's important, these terms are important because, and Kaylee will get to this further down the line for today in the history, but legally, rights have been stripped from people in these communities. So by normalizing these words and this, who people are, you expand human rights. So even the right to get married, Kaylee's married to her wife, and she wouldn't have been able to do that not that long ago. We had the option to have civil union, but not marriage. There's many cases where people from the gay community have lost their children when their spouse dies because they weren't legally recognized as their partner because they didn't have those rights. No laughing matter.
It's okay. Oh my gosh, don't be sorry. It's so cute.
I'm just playing. So that's why these terms are important, and that's why it's, so she's going to get further in, but, it really comes down to identifying these things as a matter of that people are here and we don't have the same rights as other people, and that's what we're trying to talk about. It goes far beyond the bedroom.
So I also just want to point out that in your resource guide, which I know not all of you have, but we will get them to you if you don't have one, there's a glossary of terms, much more detailed than what I'm sharing, but I do want to read the one that is for orientation, because I think this is really important to begin to understand what it means when I say a woman who is attracted to other women. So orientation is one's attraction or non-attraction to other people. An individual's orientation can be fluid, and people use a variety of labels to describe their orientation. Some, but not all, types of attraction or orientation include romantic, sexual, sensual, aesthetic, intellectual, and platonic. So this is much more than just what happens in the bedroom. It is about a person's identity. So that's why we learn these words and we use them properly and in the right situations and circumstances. So we're going to go on. From any other questions on that? We're going to move on to the I. And this is one that maybe you're not so familiar with. So I is for intersex. This is a term that you probably previously known as hermaphrodite. That is a big X no word nowadays. We don't use that word anymore. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But intersex is a term used for folks who don't fit neatly into male and female conventional definitions in chromosomal, hormonal and interior or exterior characteristics. So that might be someone that is born with 2 sets of sex organs, right? Or someone who has different chromosomal makeup, right? If you know your science, you know we're made up of 2 different, like our X and X and X and Y. There's a science lesson for another day. But so an intersex person is someone who does not fit into the category of male or female due to chromosomal, hormonal, and interior or exterior physical characteristics. There's a great documentary, and I think it's called Gender Revolution, that talks a little bit more about this. I believe it was put out through National Geographic. Highly recommend it. And then any questions about intersex? So we're pretty good with that. And then there's the letter A. Can I have my slides back up? A is for asexual. Asexual it describes people of varying degrees of sexual attraction. In the glossary, I think the glossary actually does a really good job of kind of defining what asexual means, but it says that asexuality is distinct from celibacy, which is the deliberate abstention from sexual activity despite sexual desire. So it's people with various levels of sexual attraction. These are people a person who does not experience sexual attraction can experience other forms of attraction, like we just said, right? So other ways of feeling attracted to someone that might be more important to them than the other ways. So that is what the A is. Now, this is where it gets a little sticky, because in some of your definitions of LGBTQIA+, you'll also see ally listed. That's a hot debated topic in whether or not ally has a place in the letters. An ally is someone who is supportive of the LGBTQ community. And I believe that's also you have this in your packets, and if you don't have a packet yet, you'll get one. But the A has the ally in there. I do think it's important. We'll be having that's later, again, what it means to be a good ally. And then there's the plus, because sexual orientation and gender identity is constantly evolving. There are constantly new letters being discovered, and right? Because if you think about maybe even 50 years ago, or even just 20 years ago, we really just heard about LGBT. And then we're continuously adding and evolving, so it's always important to have that plus sign there to include others who might not fall into these buckets of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, etc. So that's where that plus sign comes in. And you can do your own research. You can see the whole big list of the ones that are actually characterized as right now, and there's a lot. So you can do your own research about that. So we're going to practice saying LGBTQIA+. Not that fast. And I recommend you practice it. So ready? Let's say LGBTQIA+. And if you mess up the letters, if you start with G, we're not gonna get mad at you. I promise. I'm not. I'm going to say good job for trying. Now, John, he might get mad. He might get mad at you, but I won't. Again, we are a diverse community of people. So, how do we feel about the letters? Any questions? And if there's questions that come in on Zoom, can you just wave your hand, because I won't necessarily look at it. Thank you. Are we good? Are you okay? Let's take a breath. I need to breathe too, because we're going to go into what to say and what not to say. We're going to go to the next slide, please. Okay. Words to avoid and words that we should be using. I hear some grumbling already, and I'm ready. We're ready. The first one that you really need to try not to use is the word homosexual. it makes me cringe even me saying it. Homosexual is a clinical term. Prior to 1973, homosexuality was actually listed in the DSM, which is part of the psychological diseases. So for people who identify as LGBTQ, the word homosexual can be rather biting. It's a word that in the United Methodist Book of Discipline says that homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching. That's the only time I'll actually say it, is if whether I'm referring to that in 1973 it was removed from the DSM, or if I'm literally quoting out of the Methodist Book of Discipline what it says. But we should not be saying things like those homosexuals or homosexuality. We should be saying things like we've talked about. Instead, you could use gay, lesbian, a gay person. No, we shouldn't say things like, oh, he's a gay. Not as a noun. We should be saying LGBTQ community, LGBTQIA plus community. LGBTQ typically rolls off the tongue a little better. That's what I would encourage. Oh, look, Pastor Eric has pamphlets. Would you raise your hand if we don't? So we're not going to say the word homosexual or homosexuality. I'm going to let him pass out the flyers for a minute. Because the next ones are important. Not that the worst one isn't. Do you want to grab some from him and bring them to this side? We might not even have made enough. What? Oh. So the next word or phrase that we probably, Carolyn's coming with some more, maybe. Yes, you have a question? Hold on, wait, where's the microphone? Carolyn has it. We had no idea we'd get this many people, so sorry about the packets.
It's more a statement. I didn't know that we weren't using the term homosexual anymore, and I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Right. Thank you. I'm so glad that you learned that. All right, so keep going then. So another phrase that we want to avoid is, and these three kind of go in a lump together. We got sexual preference. It's not really okay. The gay lifestyle. It's not a lifestyle. It's not a preference. It's who I am. Sexual identity is also one that we want to kind of caution away from, because again, it's not just about sex, right? And that just was in the list of things that you shouldn't really say anymore. What you should be using is sexual orientation. If you're trying to say, well, my daughter's sexual preference is lesbian. That doesn't really work. My daughter's sexual orientation is lesbian. So those we really want to try to avoid using. The next one's a really big one, and that's the gay agenda. Gay agenda and gay lifestyle, I think, kind of go hand in hand. They've been used by anti-LGBTQ groups in the US and beyond, right? We hear often from conservative, the Christian right, especially the gay agenda. We don't have an agenda. We just want to be who we are. We just want to love who we love. We want to celebrate. We want to just have rainbows everywhere, some of us. We just want to be who we are. So there's no agenda. Instead, you should talk about the accurate descriptions of the legal issues, i.e., transgender rights right now are under attack. They just banned drag in Tennessee. That's how we should be talking about it. Not, oh my gosh, those drag queens and their agenda. No, that's not how we talk about it. But LGBTQ rights are at stake right now. We know that, right? We know how things are going. And, you know, so that's how you should be talking about it. Name the actual issues on the table, not just say, oh, the gay agenda or whatever's going on with the gays. People say those because we don't know. Sometimes we just don't know better. So that's a big one that we want to avoid. I don't think that many people in this room would be using the gay agenda, and sometimes we use it jokingly, and that's okay. Like, as gays, we can say it, but you probably shouldn't. Oh. The other one is oh yeah, we lost Zoom. I lost Zoom. It's in the Sunday email. Yeah, we can put it on the website, but it is in the Sunday email that went out this morning from the church. It is there. I think it says resource packet. But thank you, yeah. And we'll make sure it gets on the website. We'll talk to Teresa about that this week. So some other derogatory language that's been used, tranny, let's not use that anymore. Instead use transgender person, or that same with transgendered. It's not a transgendered person, it's a transgender person. And again, we'll be doing more about gender in our next session in May. So that's your preview of coming attractions. Other derogatory language we really shouldn't be using: fag, dyke, homo, hermaphrodite. That's a big one right now because we're using the words intersex instead. I'm sure when I was doing my research for this, you can go online, GLSEN, Human Rights Campaign, all these websites have words that you really shouldn't be using anymore and what to replace them with. But it was way too much to do. I didn't want to overwhelm you. But these are just the ones that we often hear on a regular basis and we want to kind of get going on. So let's continue. Now let's talk about happy things. Ready, set, go. Ready, set, slide. Ready, set, magic. Okay, well, while we're waiting for the slide to change, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the rainbow flag. Woo! Because this is fun history. So in 1978, the artist Gilbert Baker, an openly gay man and a drag queen, designed the first rainbow flag. He was urged by Harvey Milk. Do all of y'all know Harvey Milk, one of the first openly gay elected officials in the U.S., to create a symbol of pride for the gay community? And I'm reading this directly from an article. So Baker decided to make that symbol a flag because he saw flags as the most powerful symbol of pride. He said in an interview, "Our job as gay people was to come out, to be visible, to live in the truth, as I say, to get out of the lie. A flag really fit that mission because that's the way of proclaiming your visibility or saying, this is who I am." So he sort of saw the rainbow as a natural flag from the sky, right? We see rainbows in the sky after a storm. And he adopted 8 colors for the stripes. Now you'll see that our current one only has 6, and that's because in early production, there was something that went wrong and they couldn't get all 8 colors. So now we have 6. I know, so now we only have 6. But the original 8, it was hot pink, red, orange, yellow, green, turquoise, indigo, and violet. And so they actually made the first flags by hand, and those original first flags by hand did have the hot pink and the turquoise, but they had to be taken out in order for mass production for some reason. And that's what resulted in the current rainbow flag. And each color actually had a meaning. So he decided that each color of the rainbow would have a meaning. And so the ones that we see on our rainbow flag, on our very rainbow panels outside, mean this. Red means life. Orange means healing. Yellow means sunlight. Green means nature. Indigo means serenity. And purple means spirit. And the turquoise originally meant art, and the hot pink meant sex. And so it wasn't until 1994 that the flag was truly established as the symbol for LGBTQ pride. And it actually was made, a mile-long version was created for the 25th anniversary of the Stonewall riots, which we'll be talking about in a minute. So that's the history of the rainbow flag. It means so much more than we give it credit for. Oftentimes we see a rainbow, it means so much. I've been here, how long? 4 months? If that, 4 or 5 months. I've had so many people tell me they were drawn to this church because of the rainbows outside. Because they knew it was a place, and we don't like to say a safe space because not every space is safe. We can't guarantee that a place is safe, but a seminary professor taught me that it's a place where you can be brave. It's a brave space. When you see somewhere with rainbows, as a queer person, I know that I can walk in with my wife and feel brave enough to be who I am. So that's what the rainbows mean. It's happiness, life, healing, sunlight, nature, serenity, spirit. It's a beautiful thing. So there's the rainbow story of the day. Some symbols. So the first one on the top left. Does anybody know what that symbol with you know the male and female symbols, right? You know that. I learned it. I don't know when, but the women are like rooted here and the men go out and go hunting. That's how I learned it in like elementary school, but we'll just stick with that. But the ones with the little cross coming down, the two, does anybody know what that symbol is? Lesbian, so the symbol for lesbian. Yep. And then the one with the 2 arrows going out, who knows what that symbol's for? Gay. That's the symbol for being gay. Does anybody know what the one all the way on the top right is? Transgender. Good job, Rich Basham. You get a gold star over there. I knew that one might trip people up. So that's the symbol for transgender. As you can see, it kind of encompasses both male and female, and then a new arrow off to the side. I know a transgender woman who's got it tattooed big on her chest, and she wears it proudly. Somebody I went to high school with, who I've only recently reconnected with because she came out as transgender and I came out as lesbian around the same time, and we made that connection of what we were going through. Okay, so then we've got on the bottom right, underneath the transgender symbol, what is that flag? Does anybody know? Transgender flag. Good job, Carol and company. Yes, that is the transgender flag. So when you see the blue and the pink and the white, that is the transgender flag. We're going to skip the pink triangle for a minute. We're going to go to the flag underneath the lesbian symbol. Does anybody know what that one is called? It's a tricky one. Do you know, Marlena? What's it called? The progress flag. So this was created by an artist over the last couple of years. I don't know his name. I really should, but I don't. So it incorporates the transgender colors and also black and brown for racial justice. So this is a symbol that we're seeing more and more. More and more rainbow flags are being replaced with that because we want to say the LGBTQ community we are intersectional in our justice. That means that we look at things from all different perspectives, right? Awesome, I'm so glad you knew that one. Okay, the one in the middle. Per pink triangle. Ooh, I hear some grumbles. Does anybody know the history of Ellen Ashburn has a pink triangle on her thing. It says, God loves each one. Jonathan, do you want to share what it is? Microphone, hold on. Oh, I have it, just kidding. This is what happens when you leave me in charge of things.
To me, the pink triangle means fight or flight and be very cautious. Pink triangle was used in concentration camps in Nazi Germany to distinguish gay people and to treat them as such. And it was reclaimed back in the 80s during the AIDS crisis as a sign of caution that the government was working against people, the disease of HIV. So it is a very fight or flight symbol for me.
Yeah, thank you. Jonathan hit the nail on the head there. You have a lot of information in your packet about the history of the pink triangle. Some images of gay men with pink triangles on in concentration camps. But again, it was a symbol that's been reclaimed as a positive symbol of self-identity. I actually, y'all know I am tattooed. I have a upside down, it's not pink, it's just regular, but upside down triangle on my ankle that I got when I came out as a symbol for myself. So it's one that's been reclaimed by the community. Any questions on the symbols? There's more. There's a whole page of them in your resource packet if you want to learn more. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Because I know we're running close to time. I want to respect people's time. I'm not going to read all of this to you. You have a timeline in your packet that is 5 pages long, all about LGBTQ history. There's some I want to point out. I want to point out the first 2, that these are like 2 of the, in the new, actually, well, one of them in New England. But in 1624, Richard Cornish of the Virginia colony is tried and hanged for sodomy. And in 1649, Sarah White Norman is convicted for lesbian activity in Plymouth, Mass. Discrimination against LGBTQ people goes way back. And then in 1779, Thomas Jefferson actually revised Virginia law to make sodomy punishable by mutilation, not by death. There's a lot of history that has not been told. As we know through the racial justice history books too, right? There's so much that hasn't been told that deserves to be read about and learned about. So I really encourage you to read through some of this stuff. I'm respecting your time, and I did prepare some stuff specifically. First, I want to mention the sodomy laws. So if you're not familiar with the sodomy laws, they were used against lesbians and gay men in the 60s and 70s particularly, but they go like all the way back in history. But they were used during the gay rights movement as a justification for discrimination. So it was a way that the more conservative folks said, you know what, we're going to discriminate them by making laws that say, you can't be who you are, you can't do what you want to do. So I want to first talk a little bit about the Stonewall riots, which I know many of you are probably familiar with, but you might not be, and that was in 1969. So on June 28th, 1969, the New York City police raided the Stonewall Inn, which was a gay club in Greenwich Village, New York City, and it sparked a riot that lasted 6 days. There were violent protests and clashes, and it was a major catalyst for the gay rights movement. So something you want to know is that in the 1960s, it was a not very welcoming time for LGBTQ people. There was this was the exact wording from the law, but the solicitation of same-sex relations was illegal in NYC. So LGBT people flocked to bars and clubs where they could freely express themselves without fear. And so gay clubs, that's the importance of them, is there were places where people could just be themselves without fear of being told, no, you can't do this. But then, the New York State Liquor Authority punished and shut them down, often arguing disorderly events. That law was overturned in 1966, but public quote-unquote behavior was still illegal, so police harassment continued. And that's why police would often raid these gay bars and these gay clubs, and it would be raids and protests and violent clashes. And these were places that welcomed people as they were. And so the Stonewall riots really were a catalyst for the gay rights movement. And I don't know if you know, but in 2016, President Obama made Stonewall a national monument. which is in Greenwich Village, and that was just a big deal, saying this is part of our history, this is part of who we are. We'll go to the next slide, actually. So this is sort of more modern history. We pick up in 1973, as I mentioned, the American Psychiatric Association voted to remove homosexuality from its official list of psychiatric disorders. And if you're a United Methodist, you might want to know that 1972 is the year that the homosexuality clause was added to the Book of Discipline. It was removed from the DSM and put smack dab in the Methodist Book of Discipline. Interesting correlation there. 1977, as we mentioned, Harvey Milk became the first openly gay person to be elected to public office. I skipped putting this in because I ran out of space. 1996 was when the Defense of Marriage Act was put into place. Do you have a question? 1995. Oh. Wait, you're going to have to say that again, sorry.
In 1995, the UCC became the first Christian denomination to openly affirm same-sex marriage, same-gender marriage.
95! Y'all are way ahead of us here in the Methodist land. Good job, UCC. So then the UCC does that, and then in 1996 comes the Defense of Marriage Act with President Clinton under the Clinton administration, which said that marriage is between a man and a woman. And it allowed states to refuse to recognize same-sex marriages granted under law of other states. It essentially prevented and this is the language used, this is why I'm using it, same-sex couples could not get the federal benefits of straight couples. So it was 1996 that law came about. Then in 2003, Supreme Court overturned sodomy laws. 2004, Massachusetts became the first U.S. state to legally recognize same-sex marriage. 2011, the U.S. military policy ends Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I'm certain that most of you understand that law and know that, but it was from 1993 that prohibited lesbian, gay, and bisexual because the transgender laws in the military didn't come until later. It prevented them from being out while serving. And that was overturned in 2011. And then the most recent, probably the most celebrated ones in the last 10 years were in 2013 when the U.S. Supreme Court strikes down the Defense of Marriage Act, saying it was unconstitutional and entitled same-sex couples to the same federal benefits as heterosexual couples, meaning insurance, immigration, taxes, Social Security, etc. So it allowed that finally. But then in 2015 was the fundamental right to marry. And this was in the Supreme Court case called Burgerville versus Hodges. There's some great documentary. We watched a documentary about it on Netflix. I don't remember what it was called, but we can look at it if you're interested in more. But in that one, the Supreme Court ruled that the fundamental right to marry is guaranteed to same-sex couples. It required all states to perform and recognize same-sex marriage. Prior to that ruling in 2015, only 36 states allowed the constitutional right to marry. And I actually want to kind of end our time with a quote from Justice Kennedy after the 2015 ruling, and this is what he said in his statement. And this is actually what Lena and I had read at our wedding last year, almost 2 years ago, whenever it was. November 2021. He said this, and I think this is just a great way to close. No union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family. In forming a marital union, two people become something greater than they once were. As some of the petitioners in these cases demonstrate, marriage embodies a love that may endure even past death. It would misunderstand these men and women to say they disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they do respect it so deeply that they seek to find its fulfillment for themselves. Their hope is not to be condemned to live in loneliness, excluded from one of civilization's oldest institutions. They ask for equal dignity in the eyes of the law. The Constitution grants them that right. The judgment of the Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit is reversed. It is so ordered. And that was a huge victory for LGBTQ people, one that was fought for years and years and years. And I and Lena both, I know for our own lives, but I give thanks every day for the people who fought, who've come before me, whose shoulders I stand on. The lesbians and gay people who didn't have that right to marry. And I know I give thanks to them every day. So I think that's where we end up. It's under an hour. I did it. Oh, we have a question though. Oh, wait, here. You gotta use this because the people on Zoom can't hear without the mic. Sorry.
It's not a question actually, but the new packets that were just passed out as a backup of the other ones, we're missing a couple pages. Whoa.
Sorry, Pastor Eric. Okay,
So-
we'll make sure you got those pages.
Thank you.
Not my secretarial salary.
You're fired as a secretary.
I don't know how that, maybe like it was double-sided or something. All right, well, we will make sure that that gets remedied. Yeah, Rich.
As I sit here and look at the spectrum of folks that sit in this room and are identified in that litany we have, the one thing I'd like us all to remember is no matter where you identify on that spectrum, or if you don't identify on that spectrum, we are all still children of God.
Yes. Amen. Amen for that. Love is love. Any other questions? I want to just thank Paul Helvig and the Faith Forum for allowing us. I know Carolyn said that, but we are really grateful. And for all of y'all for coming today and for being willing to learn. So stay tuned for the next one, 102 in May 21st? It's the Sunday before the Sunday of Memorial Day. I think it's the 21st. We'll be talking about gender. We might even have a special guest on Zoom. We'll see. Don't know yet. So thank you. We did it.